Et salut, malarge tout le monde pour cette vidéo sur Stubbs The Zombie. Donc je précise donc évidemment, comme le titre de cette vidéo le dit, c'est une vidéo dédiée à la localisation des têtes de hippo du coup, et donc plus communément au commentaire des développeurs, donc le dev commentary tout simplement. Donc voilà, donc le let's play remonte à 2021 du coup. On est en 2025. Donc il y a genre 4 ans qui s'est écoulé. Oui. Il y a du temps qui s'est laissé passer du coup, donc voilà. Mais en même temps, la technologie a évolué, donc du coup, c'était beaucoup plus digeste pour moi maintenant de faire ça, la traduction. Parce que c'est pas la première fois que je fais une vidéo où je dois m'amuser à tout traduire à l'oreille, du coup. Donc voilà. Mais bon, commençons déjà par le point de début. Donc, qu'est-ce que les têtes de hippo? Ceux qui ne savent pas, Stubbs The Zombie a un collectible qui sont les têtes de hippo. Les têtes de hippo, en fait, permettent tout simplement de débloquer les dev commentary, donc les commentaires des développeurs, tout simplement. Donc, une fois que ça c'est dit, c'est dit. Maintenant, je vais vous expliquer comment on débloque ces têtes de hippo avant de vous lâcher comme ça, du coup. Donc, pour débloquer ces têtes de hippo, il faut terminer le jeu, du coup. Donc voilà. En injuste, tout simplement, en difficulté la plus élevée. Une manière un peu de nous récompenser. Donc voilà. De toute façon, le mode injuste, il faut le débloquer en terminant une première fois le jeu. Donc voilà. Mais il porte très bien son nom, du coup. Donc voilà. Du coup, donc, il faut avoir terminé le jeu en injuste pour débloquer les têtes de hippo. Donc, pourquoi ce sont des têtes de hippo? C'est parce que le studio qui a développé le jeu, son logo, c'est une tête de hippo. Voilà. C'est le logo de Wild Load, tout simplement. Donc, voilà. Bref. Donc, une fois que je vous ai expliqué ça, du coup, on va arriver à quelque chose où je vais vous expliquer un peu que, du coup, une fois que vous avez terminé le jeu en injuste, du coup, vous pouvez du coup refaire les niveaux comme dans la difficulté que vous voulez pour récupérer les têtes de hippo que vous avez débloquées. Donc voilà. Pas besoin de les refaire en injuste non plus. Donc voilà. Vous le faites en facile ou en normal pour vous amuser, tout simplement. Bref. Mais voilà, faut savoir que les dev commentary ne seront pas disponibles dans les options pour les réécouter au besoin, sachant qu'en plus ils sont disponibles qu'en anglais. Il n'y a que la VO et il n'y a pas été traduit. Du coup, le jeu en lui-même a été traduit en surface. Du coup, donc on n'a pas de traduction pour ce qui a été caché. C'est pas la première fois que ça arrive à un jeu. Du coup, le premier jeu qui me vient en tête où ça a été pareil, je pense à The Last Story, et je pense qu'il y a plein d'autres jeux où ça a été le cas, évidemment. Donc voilà. Mais, c'est aussi un peu le principe de cette vidéo. C'est que j'ai pris le temps de faire la traduction et donc le sous-titrage des dev commentary. Ça n'a pas été simple, c'est pas la première fois que je fais ça non plus. Bon, c'était un peu nauséeux quand je l'ai fait pour la légende de Korra sur PS3 pour le let's play. Enfin, let's play, ouais, walkthrough plutôt. Du coup, en plus en difficulté élevée, ça n'a pas été simple. C'était un peu nauséeux à réécouter je ne sais combien de fois les mêmes phrases. Donc quand j'ai commencé à faire cette vidéo sur Stubbs, je vous avoue, j'étais un petit peu en reculant, en me disant ça va être infernal. Du coup, donc voilà, tout simplement. Mais, mais, j'avais quand même entamé le projet, du coup, que j'avais entre-temps délaissé, abandonné dans un coin. Donc voilà. Sauf que maintenant, les choses ont changé. La technologie a évolué, et donc du coup, j'ai des outils plus faciles pour faire de la traduction. Et l'outil principal, c'est l'outil de l'IA, du coup, qui m'a servi d'assistance pour faire ça, tout simplement. Donc voilà, C'était une fois que ça s'était fait, bon, c'est plus simple. C'est beaucoup plus simple. Donc voilà, c'est beaucoup moins nauséeux et on fait ça plus rapidement. Du coup, donc je suis enfin content de pouvoir m'enlever ça de la tête et de me dire que ça sera fait. Donc voilà, je précise, la traduction sera probablement pas parfaite. Je fais ce que je peux, du coup, sachant que les développeurs peuvent être issus de coins différents, donc ils ont des mots, ils ont des phrasés, peuvent avoir potentiellement des accents, qui fait que du coup, bah, certains mots sont prononcés un peu différemment. Et donc du coup, tu as un peu de mal à reconnaître, ou des fois, surtout quand ils parlent à voix basse, ça c'est casse-pied. Donc du coup, tu fais comme tu peux, même avec une IA, hein, tout simplement. Donc voilà. Mais j'ai néanmoins réussi à faire un truc assez global, et réussir à récupérer un max de trucs pour avoir un truc compréhensible. Donc voilà, sachant que j'ai baissé du coup le son des bruitages et la musique pour avoir juste principalement les voix. Donc voilà, donc je précise, une fois que j'ai récupéré les têtes de hippo, bon, je déplace plus le personnage, tout simplement, ou du moins très peu. Parce que le problème, c'est que j'ai pas envie de me confronter à un moment donné où il y a les voix de PNJ ou des ennemis dans le jeu qui peuvent potentiellement couvrir la voix des devs. Tout simplement, donc voilà, j'ai essayé le maximum à éviter ce genre de situation. Tout simplement. Donc voilà. Donc j'espère vraiment que ça vous plaira et que ça vous sera utile. Très clairement, j'espère. Du coup. Donc voilà. Sachant que moi je suis très friand de tout ce qui est dev commentary ou making of en général. Vous trouverez quelques making of que j'ai mis en disponibilité sur ma chaîne YouTube, en l'occurrence. Comme les making of God of War, je les ai pas tous faits encore, hein, du coup, mais ça va pas tarder dans les mois à venir. Donc voilà, mais voilà, c'est vraiment pour rendre ça beaucoup plus accessible. Du coup, sachant que Stubbs n'est pas un mauvais jeu en soi, il a un concept que j'adore, du coup, qui est de jouer un zombie, du coup, dans les années 50-60, et c'est super plaisant, du coup. Donc voilà, le truc, ce qui peut être très chiant avec ce jeu, c'est juste que bah il est pas, c'est pas un jeu qui a été, en tout cas ce remaster, je sais pas pour le jeu d'origine, du coup, euh, il est pas stable. Donc du coup, moi j'ai souvent eu des plantages in-game, du coup, donc ça a été un peu chiant. Donc voilà. Mais bon, le principal c'est que c'est fait, du coup, et que vous allez pouvoir regarder, découvrir, peut-être apprendre des trucs intéressants, ou pas, on ne sait pas, on verra. Enfin, moi j'ai brièvement lu, j'ai dû lire un minimum quand même ce qui était à traduire du coup, si c'était correctement traduit, tout ça du coup, donc voilà. Si c'était cohérent, un minimum cohérent dans les dialogues entre devs du coup. Donc voilà. Bref, je vous laisse ici, j'espère que ça vous plaira. Pour ceux qui veulent vraiment compléter le jeu, que ça vous sera utile pour trouver les têtes de hippo. Pour les personnes qui veulent juste écouter, que vous apprendrez des trucs, que ça vous plaira, même que vous soyez français et que vous soyez fan du jeu, que ça vous plaira quand même d'avoir ça de beaucoup plus accessiblement, du coup, que de faire ça à l'oreille, si vous n'avez pas forcément un grand niveau d'anglais, du coup. Donc voilà. Bref, merci à vous. Je vous fais des bisous et je vous dis tout simplement à une prochaine. Allez, Kenavo.
Follow me. We've got so much to see. I've got a whole data tape filled with 640 kilobytes of fun facts about Punch Bowl. It'll take us a few hours to get through the whole thing. Why don't we just walk around a bit so you can get your bearings?
I'm Alex Seropian, project director on Stubbs.
I am Matt Sell, writer for Stubbs.
Let's talk about where the idea for the game came from.
Well, we were all trying to come up with game ideas, and no one had any good ones. Mine were the worst of all. And I remember walking around one day, my house just being sort of despondent that I hadn't come up with anything good, and I was trying to come up with a good action idea, and I thought, oh, where does action in games come from? People running around, chaos in the streets, cats and dogs lying together, the dead crawling out of their graves. Hey! And so yeah, it seemed pretty obvious that it was about time for a game where you could play a dead guy and have him eat a bunch of brains. And so that's, in short, where the idea came from.
The experience is really much fuller if you let me guide you around.
So we're sitting around with probably a few dozen game ideas written up on one page a piece, and yeah, so we started talking about what if you were the zombie.
Yeah, we actually had a vote. I remember we had a big meeting and there was a vote, and this was the only idea that everybody seemed to vote for.
Well, it was top 5. Everybody had their top 5.
Right. Well, we picked 3, and this was the one that I think
was in common.
Yeah, it was one thing that seemed to keep popping up. There were a few other strong contenders too.
Yeah, it just barely beat out that game idea, which was all stick figures.
Just barely.
There's only so many rungs on the corporate ladder.
Andrew Monday, first conceived.
There's a few big design challenges that we started trying to tackle at the beginning. One was creating the world, this sort of retro futuristic, engineered city of the 50s. And our strategy there was to put in lots of robots and hovering cars and shiny stuff, things that looked like it came out of a World's Fair.
And we also tried, I remember trying to research stores and stuff from the 50s, trying to get a decent feel for what cities were actually like then and what someone in that era would want when they built a city of the future.
Yeah, there was this great artist, his name was Raidbaugh, who drew all these, he was doing this crazy art back in the 50s and 60s, and he had this whole series under the heading of The Future We Were Promised, which was sort of inspirational for our monorail and some other elements of the city. We got a lot of inspiration out of looking at architecture that was built for the World's Fairs too.
Yeah, you would be surprised at how much research we did for a game about a dead guy who runs around eating brains.
Yeah, we got all these cool books that were had all these ads that were done in the 50s. Man, there was some funny shit in there. This cigarette ad. What was that one?
The baby with the look on its face. The baby's just done something horribly wrong, and he's looking up at mom with the big puppy dog eyes, and he says, "Before you strike me, mom, strike up a lucky strike," or something like that. It was something really awful.
Yeah.
Come on, mom, have a cig.
Yeah.
Chill out.
That's better than abusing me.
Sorry for playing ball in the house.
Yeah, that was funny. And then I remember we bought this stack of like Life magazines and Time magazines from the 50s, and when they showed up, they were like completely covered with mold, so we had to stick them in the other room.
We had to stick them on the other side of the office in an opened window.
Yeah, whatever happened to those?
I think they fell out.
One of the cool ideas what we had at the beginning, which stuck, was the idea that it takes place over the course of just one day.
Yes. Yeah, starts in the morning, ends at night.
And it's kind of cool how it's all cyclic, where you start right here in front of the main drag, downtown Punch Bowl, and it ends right here.
That's true. Yeah, it was almost planned that way.
Yeah, there's lots of bookends like that. I wonder how many people will actually discover them.
I wonder if there's a prize for people to discover. Nah,
Yeah.
probably not.
Well, people can just feel good about themselves for doing it.
Yeah, Stubbs changed a lot. The character of Stubbs and everything he's doing, the people he's fighting. We went through, I don't know how many different attacks on that idea before we found something that we could live with.
Yeah, man, it was amazing how many concepts we went through just on the look of Stubbs.
That was a long, drawn-out, painful at times process.
Yeah.
Because I think we all sort of had some idea of what we wanted, and it was just very difficult to get that look. Which is weird because it's to look at Stubbs, you would not necessarily think that every detail was painstakingly rendered, but yet we went through probably hundreds of iterations of Stubbs before we got to that point.
What were some of the, I remember having this conversation where we were trying to get inspiration of what he would look like by thinking about, like, what actors he looks like and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Who was
on that list?
That was a very interesting
I remember
list.
Buscemi was on that list.
Steve Buscemi was there. Tom Waits was there.
Tom Waits, that's right.
And the Don Knotts. Someone suggested Don Knotts. Alan suggested Don Knotts.
Well, you can see a little Don Knotts in him.
There's a little bit of Don Knotts in everyone, and Stubbs is no exception. For all you trivia buffs out there, my direction to Amy Warren, the actress who played Guidebot, was Carol Channing on meth. I think she did an excellent job.
Nailed that one.
A zombie! Right there!
But yeah, that was another idea we had sort of early on, which was civilians as power-ups. So all the civilians you can eat in one bite.
And they're not just power-ups. They go from... They're the only power-up that keeps on giving. Because you eat their brain and they turn into your pal. That was the other... There were a few big ideas for Stubbs that were present right from the very start. One of them was the idea of conversion, that you would that your goal would ultimately be to subjugate and conquer this city by converting as many of its citizens into zombies as you could. And the other big idea, I think, was possession, which is sort of similar in that you would be able to use other people's abilities by possessing them somehow to compensate for one of Stubbs's deficiencies, like he can't get into a certain area, or he doesn't have a bazooka, or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember recently going back and looking at that one pager we had almost 2 years ago, and a lot of the design ideas that were in there stuck.
I see one of them. You asked for it. I don't want to die!
All right, we're here at the greenhouse.
Fabulous.
I'm Patrick Curry, the lead designer on Stubbs.
I am Nat Sell, the writer for Stubbs.
And this is a level that Matt and I kind of did together. Matt did the initial write-up for the level and had a bunch of cool ideas about what the various environments would be in it. And then I took that and translated it to the world you're seeing in front of you now.
I wanted to do a level where it was sort of like the second level of another famous game I probably shouldn't mention by name, where you were running around in big verdant hills and stuff. And I thought it might be cool if we did that all indoors. And a greenhouse seemed like the obvious thing to do, especially in Punch Bowl, where everything's all futuristic, and they grow all the food for Punch Bowl here. And that was the start of it.
You have the initial write-up for the greenhouse had 3 or 4 distinct areas, each
That's
one with
right.
their own kind of vegetation. And just through the process of making the game and getting it done, that got whittled down to 2.5. The first area is the large, hilly, outdoorsy area where we introduced the first drivable vehicle of the game, which Matt aptly named.
It's the Sodomobile.
Of course it is.
It's for people who tend the sod, of course. I can't imagine any other interpretation of that name.
And
I don't know what you're thinking, Patrick.
I don't, me either, most of the time. And then the second half of the level, or I guess second 2/3, takes place in what we kind of called the moon sci-fi area, and this is where the experimental plants were grown. And those, you might notice that the experimental plants kind of like weeds, they ended up growing through the entire level. But that's because there were some really cool concepts done, and we liked them a lot, so we put them all over the level.
Yeah, the very first original concept was that Stubbs was actually going to fight some of those plants. Some of those plants would be sentient. You have no idea how hard it is to make a sentient plant in the Halo engine, and once you've done that, how hard it is to keep it from killing you in real life. So we took them out for the benefit of all you people out there at home.
That's right, it's for humanity.
Yeah.
And you can thank us by buying more copies of Stubbs The Zombie.
No! Don't move! I see one of them. Ah! Ha ha!
One of the things that was also important from a story and just kind of player motivation standpoint in this level was initializing the chase between Stubbs and Maggie. And hopefully that once the player sees Maggie, he falls so deeply in love with her, just like Stubbs does, that he's propelled to complete the entire game, and then tell his friends to do so as well.
Here it comes! Ah! Ah! Yikes! Ah! I can't. Ah! Yeah! Run away! Run away! I'm gonna shoot you!
What the?
Back for
No!
more, eh?
No!
Even I wouldn't do that. Refute this!
Oh. Don't eat me! No, 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 no!
One thing about the greenhouse that's worth pointing out is it's kind of the first level with a challenge. The plaza is really all about introducing the player to Stubbs and to him and to how kind of the world works and brain eating. And this is the first level where you're almost guaranteed to die a time or two. At the beginning of this level, we do introduce Maggie Monday.
That's right.
The lovely.
The femme fatale, one might say,
Exactly.
of this game.
And Scagnus, who is the head of Monday's internal security.
That's true. Scagnus and Monday, actually, there's a deep, convoluted backstory with how those two came together, and perhaps you'll all read it someday in the epic novel Stubbs the Zombie, a tale of two zombies, or something like that.
I'd like to see some criminal try something.
A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
It's chewing my brain!
Also, just because some people might not, it may not be the most obvious thing in the game, you might be wondering why Scagnus and his men are dressed up like a barbershop quartet. The reason is that Scagnus and so on, they are, Scagnus is the head of Monday's internal security team, and Monday doesn't really want to walk around with a goon squad all the time looking like the Secret Service. He feels that gives the wrong image. So he has them in incognito, in disguise. And as you can tell by looking at these 6'6", 250 pounds of solid muscle guys, that works out really well.
Because most barbershop quartets are pretty buff.
That's true, true. And they can, in fact, carry a mean tune, unlike many steroid abusers. They can sing like angels.
Indeed.
That's weird.
In the second half of this level, we also introduce one of Stubbs' most powerful abilities, and that's his gut grenade. The story behind the gut grenade is that, you know, while Stubbs doesn't have guns or lasers or anything at his own disposal, it was important for us to be able to give Stubbs some attack to attack these ranged enemies. So he pulls out one of his festering wounds and chucks it at
One of the great
enemies.
One of the great things about Stubbs, the thing that reanimated Stubbs, the process by which he became a zombie, is that it actually allows him to regrow certain portions of his anatomy that might disappear over the course of an average zombie adventure, like a hand or an internal organ.
I'll show you. This isn't funny. Yikes! Yeah!
That's the other major character that we introduce at the very end of this level, is Otis Monday. Otis actually has a sort of an epic conspiracy theory which we couldn't divulge. We couldn't get around to the whole thing in the course of the game, but you'll hear bits and pieces of it. And this level is actually the first part where you get to hear a little of what makes Otis so special. And he only gets more special as the game goes on.
Yeah, I think we set up a lot of nice carrots with this level. We say, hey, here's a lot of the people who are involved that maybe you didn't see in the intro cinematic. And you're definitely guaranteed to see them all again before the game is through.
So I'm Alan Turner, and I'm a designer here at White Load. We're here to talk about the level that we lovingly know as the police station. It's interesting because it's one of the very first levels that we got functional for the game, and from it, a lot of the other basic gameplays that got enhanced throughout the rest of the game came out of this level. Everything that you are expected to know how to do, you pretty much are learning it by this level in the game.
Yep. This is Patrick Curry. I'm the lead designer, and like Alan said, everything except for the head in terms of abilities you have by now. And like Alan said, it was the first one that we ever did, so we were kind of learning as we went with the police station, figuring out, hey, how's Stubbs going to work? How are the enemies going to work? How are the zombies going to work? How's this crazy hand thing going to work? And so we tried to make a level that was conducive to teaching that to the player and still being fun.
Right. And what's also interesting about that is that the first thing that was really working in this level in terms of gameplay was the hand in the detention area. It started out as a paper project where we were moving upwards from the first floor to the detention area and then to the dance battle, and wound up working at it from the middle outwards. So the detention level and that whole hand bit got done. And originally it was only one path. You went and got one of the lieutenants and walked, this long, arduous, very boring path. And over time, that whole process got more and more convoluted and became one of my more favorite portions of the game. There's so many different ways to pull that off that you can go through it and do it and play it differently each time.
Yeah, one of the reasons that the police station ended up being one of the first levels that got done is the first game that we ever took screenshots from, or first level that we ever took screenshots of. It was the first level that we ever showed to the press. We showed it behind closed doors on a press tour, and then we showed an enhanced version of it at Game Developer Conference. And it's good, you always need a level to figure things out, and doing a level that's kind of in the middle of the game is handy because you don't have to teach the player every little thing by then, but you want to kind of feel like, hey, it's the middle of the game and the player's having fun and this is working. It's not too easy, it's not too hard.
It's all about getting that core, that core functionality working, as opposed to working first on the first level or the last level, because those two levels are always going to be the exceptions to the rule and not the rule themselves. And this level does a pretty good job of being the rule. What I also like about Police Station that came out pretty well is that each stage of it builds slowly and then caps off with a very, impacting drawn out boss type battle, but it's a situational boss as opposed to a big guy that you have to beat down. It's just you have to overwhelm and overcome. And I found after I got those working, I went back to some of my other levels and made them do a lot of the same things that really worked in this level.
Yeah, they kind of became the prototypes, like the kind of king of the hill type battle in what we call the muster room before Stubbs is captured.
Right.
Turned out really well. It's really fun. And then what we call the gauntlet, which is right before the end of the level, where Stubbs has to get through the super long hallway with guys coming in from either side. Both of those turned out really fun and are kind of signature moments in the game.
Stop, go, stop, go. Repeat ad infinitum. Ho-hum.
Hi, this is Alan Turner, game designer here at White Load, and we're talking about the mall.
Hi, I'm Aaron, and I'm a artist working for Wide Load. And we're talking about the mall.
So, yeah, this is A50 Mall, and this is another one of the early levels that we started working on. There is the police station was the first one we got functional, but the mall was probably one of the first ones we started building just to get the idea of what physical spaces should feel like when you're outside with Stubbs, and what worked, what didn't work, what the engine could handle, what we couldn't handle, how much of a cityscape we could pull off within the limits of the Halo 1 engine.
Yeah.
I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite level to play through right now. Good job, Alan.
Well, good job, Aaron, since you're the one who made it look so
Oh,
wonderful.
I didn't really do that much, just those gold curves that you see.
Right there!
Have some 45. I'm bringing you.
Right, so this is actually one of my favorite levels too. What I like about it is, like the police station, you've got more than one way to get to where I want you to go. You know, I believe when I watch people play it, most people tend to hang off and run to the left, but you can also run down the right, and you get a slightly different experience when you go down the right. And when you play it co-op, doing both of those things with players throwing hands, possessing people, going all over the place, having guys in the overpass, having guys underneath, the whole thing just is crazy cool.
Yeah, I really like right here how you can get a whole horde of zombies, and when you go into the garage, and like you look back at them, you'll see them all start to. That guy has an axe. Why does he have an axe? That's awesome.
So, what was also neat about this was that in the early incarnations of it, you could see from inside the mall out to the streets, and one of the goals was it was supposed to be one of these old school concrete malls where you can walk around, look outside, and fall to your death if you weren't careful. And what we found was that as cool an idea as that was, it just was turning out to be not very practical frame rate wise for the engine. And we were pulling hair trying to figure out a good way to make it still look like a mall on the inside. And what we wound up doing was putting in these snazzy windows that are kind of like they're collision barriers. They're not really windows, but they have this neat flare. I don't know if you can tell us more how that works.
Well, what's great about it is that before the frame rate was like 5 frames per second, as you could see outside, and it was drawing everything. And then, it just looked like a regular parking garage with without the little haze. We couldn't get the haze in there until we put this. If you look closely at the windows, there's like this white little haze coming off, and I think it actually made the game. It made it look like creepier.
Right, it did. It adds this sort of old school
Yeah.
film grain bloom
Yeah,
that,
the little environment.
that makes it, and it actually is weird because it actually makes the insides feel bigger now that that's closed off, where before they felt kind of small and cramped.
Let's thin your ranks a little.
The sequel to last year's terror extravaganza is finally
I
here.
see.
Frightmeister Edward Kowalczyk brings you 8 aliens from space.
There, the other things that was neat about this was that it was an opportunity to play around with various ideas on choke points. One of the first ones you encounter is when you're going through the overpass and you get the ability to use your head. There's a mob of riot cops, and then at the elevator there's this mob of lieutenant cops and beat cops and taser cops. And up until that point, there's just kind of there's a slow build, and it doesn't ever really get too intensive. But when you hit that point, it brings you to a screeching halt. So if you are trying to charge through the level, you hit there and suddenly you have to fight. And it's a pretty tough fight. If you play this on Insane, it's pretty insane.
I usually let my zombies do all the work for me there. Just hang back.
Yeah, this is great to see it in, when you play it in easy. And a little bit on normal, but more so in easy, where you can really build up a nice sizable zombie horde. And it's kind of neat when you get up one length of the garage and you look back and you see this horde of zombies just coming through, mauling through people. That's satisfying. There's a certain cathartic power.
The hour of reckoning is at... stop eating me, please!
I haven't seen brain eating in 20 years!
Die! Die! My God!
No, make us get the hose!
What's that?
I got a wife and kids! He just ate Bob's brain! I'm bringing you in. Please, not the throat!
Brain.
The other part of this level is the promenade. There's like, it's two sections, right? There's a garage area and then there's a promenade. And the promenade was just basically, the idea is it's this long outdoor mall of stores and shops and movie theaters and, you know, the entertainment section of Punch Bowl. And what I always thought was cool about the promenade is it has a slow upward progress to it. So you eventually get to this point where there's this ramp fight. And the ramp fight in there, we actually initiates from one of our old demo levels when we were first trying to shop the game around. We had this, a lot of it was based on this whole taking of a bridge. And it took the idea of that we had in that demo level because it just seemed so cool and built it up into the fight that's in the mall right now. And you know, once you got people coming in, delivering things with cars and all kinds of folks shooting at you. And this is the last time you see the police. So every police character in the game, except for the chief, is in the garage and in the promenade section of the garage.
The world has ever known.
Zombie right there!
This is Alan Turner again, and we're looking at the mall fight. I guess the official name is A60 Mall Fight, but this used to be a portion of the mall, and the mall got so huge that we wound up having to chop this off and develop it by itself into a brand new level.
I'm Chris Cobb. I'm one of the artists here at Wide Load. I came in on the end of this level and polished it up, try to get it looking good for the kids at home.
When Chris says he polished it up, though, he's not lying. This thing looked terrible for a very long time. It was like I say, it was chopped off from the mall, and didn't quite know what was going to happen with it, since a whole lot of the things that were introduced to the mall got chopped with it. So we had to find ways to make it look interesting, to keep the frame rate down, which Chris did a wonderful job of making that happen. Because before, it was at a point where you would come into this huge open space and it would just crawl. You know, if you got anything to say about that, this big?
Yeah, basically I think it was just cut in half. I think he used to be able to run all the way around the thing.
Right.
And so basically this is it's a U shape now, and it's all elbowed off, unlike many of our other levels. So yeah.
So in that this was initially part of the mall, it was originally the introduction of the militia, and the militia were going to be introduced midway through the mall, and they were going to be fighting with cops and all kinds of other crazy things, and there was going to be like this neat little three-way fight, and it just wound up not being a practical thing for us to do in the course of developing those levels. So here we just toss you right in with the militia. You find out about them a little bit through their dialogue, a little bit through what's going on with Otis and the big guy, the boss at the end of it. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say. This is not necessarily one of my favorite levels, but it's one that I really, towards the end of the process, started to dig, just because it looked good. I mean, even though some of the play wasn't what I wanted it to be, the visuals here were so cool that I found myself just wanting to sit back and hang out and look at the water spouts and
yeah,
the skies.
This did turn out to be one of my favorite levels. I don't know. It just turned out all right. When I got it, it was pretty barren, but I just threw in those little grass median type things, and threw some trees in. It's always easy to spice up an environment with a bunch of organic plant life. Every mall's got to have the spouting water fountains. So.
Welcome to the Punch Bowl Mall. Why stand outside in the hot sun when all the best bargains are inside? Come on in and shop. Welcome to the Punch Bowl Mall, where your dollar goes farther. Much farther.
The interior went through a bunch of different versions as well. There was initially a long dungeon crawl in these low stores before you got to that central atrium area, and we just decided that the atrium area was so much more impressive and so much more entertaining to fight through than any of the other stuff there. So I figured we just make this whole level into a level of vistas. So you've got this big outside area where you can see as far as you can see, and then when you get inside, you've got this scope that you look up, you see the sky, and you see everything else around you, and it was a real hassle with the portals trying to make all that work, but I think it came out pretty well.
What? Uh-oh!
It's a brain eater.
Teeth!
Smell that bacon?
In my
Whether
pretty
it's breakfast,
skull!
lunch, or dinner,
My
everything goes better with a many slab of bacon. Come to Bacon Hut and stock out and wonder me.
There's the boss fight, which came out pretty, it came out pretty interesting. It came out pretty well. It was initially a fight that involved a lot more zombies and a lot more animations than we necessarily had the time for. So we had to cut a few corners, but I think the corners we cut wound up making this really tasty. Once we added the music that's in the background when you're fighting when you're fighting Jumbo, before it was just this very dry, open air, Jumbo's yelling at you as he's chopping at you. And then Alex came to me and said, hey, why don't you add in the banjo music? And I did it, and wham, it became this hilarious fight with a man with a chainsaw, something I didn't think I would ever see anywhere.
As far as my part in this, I just went in, tried to spice it up a bit, tried to, you know, we have a difficult mix of past and future with a lot of these levels. So it takes place in the late 50s, but a lot of it's supposed to look futuristic. So took a few different elements of the interior of the mall here and just tried to spice them up with the little walkways and the escalator type things looking kind of flashy and futuristic. But then a lot of it with the concrete walls and everything looks, I think, pretty old school, I guess. So it's an unusual combination, but I think it works better in this level than, well, it works pretty well in this level, I think.
Dangerous world out there, son. Don't send your kid out there without a good firearm.
That was an
Got the
axe.
little shooters. They need to protect themselves from corners,
Won't someone
beatniks,
help an
and other
innocent
natural
youth?
enemies of the American child. Arm your offspring at Lil's Cube. Chief, wanna buy a set sail? Check out the TV box.
When I first was trying to figure out what this atrium should look like, I wound up walking around in a bunch of a bunch of malls here in Chicago. And I think the one that inspired this the most was probably the Water Tower Plaza here. Just because there's this wonderful central elevator thing that they have going on. And you've got these big round walkways that let you look up and down, and the overpasses and the overhangs very much mimic what's going on in that. If you ever get a chance to come to Chicago, you should definitely go check out that mall, but don't go looking for any zombies anyway.
It's funny you say that because I also we didn't talk about this, but I also thought of the water tower when working on this. There's a part right when you enter where you're going up these escalators, and there's these little water fountains that shoot these little like globs of water, and I always try to catch them. So once again, we've got the water fountains inside here. I couldn't quite pull that off, but we've got some fountain sprays inside here. Those are always fun.
I'm Doug Zartman. I'm the level designer for the level known to me only as B10 Farmhouse. I guess the real title will come at some future date.
And I am Matt Sell, who wrote this stuff.
Yes, for what it's worth.
Yes.
First thing you notice in this level is the corn.
Yeah, this is a remarkably well-farmed corn farm for a dilapidated farmhouse.
For a rabble of a militia.
Yes, for a farm that isn't even supposed to be a corn farm.
Run by a nutcase.
Yes.
Yes, corn.
And there's actually a very good reason for that you'll discover someday.
Do tell. Oh. So this isn't that day, huh?
No.
I actually, I first came up with the idea of using corn as a way to hide and be able to fight this huge militia force. I knew I wanted to use machine guns. And I actually did a little research into heavy machine gun penetration into cornfields, or at least tried to. I realized pretty quickly that that's a field of scholarship that is remarkably little served.
Plus, you have to pay for that corn after you shoot it up, and
that's right.
We don't have that kind of money, to be totally honest.
Certainly, academia doesn't.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty pleased with how it worked out. It doesn't completely hide you. If you're standing in the middle of one of the open rows, the militia can see you and will shoot at you. But overall, it gives you a lot of cover from their sight.
Where'd it go?
The other thing you notice right off the bat is these scarecrows. I don't know how many people notice their first playthrough that the scarecrow looks, or is supposed to look, a lot like Stubbs.
Is there a reason for that, Doug?
The player will have to decide for themselves why, why the Scarecrow might possibly look something like Edward Stubblefield.
There was also originally supposed to be a bit of a little mini challenge in these cornfields where you would pose as a scarecrow to avoid detection.
That's right. The idea was that you'd be able to knock over one of these scarecrows, get up on the base, and assume a scarecrow pose, and then the militia would not be able to see you because you would be such a startling, you would bear such a startling resemblance to the scarecrow. Once we had the corn all implemented and working, we realized that putting a lot of work into making the scarecrow thing function was pointless because you get plenty of cover just in the fields. So in the end, we decided not to do that.
What's that?
Coming up to the sheep pen here.
The sheep pen. Yeah. What can we tell people about the sheep?
Well, the militia are enamored of sheep.
Well, who isn't?
They're so gosh darn cute. The militia don't care about much, but they care about the sheep.
Sheep, just as a side note, have actually been an important role. They've actually had an important role in the Stubbs storyline for several iterations.
Even before the
even before the farm, there was a plan for Stubbs to have a little sheep sidekick, and for that sidekick to play a role. We got rid of that pretty quickly, just because the things I had written into the script for the sheep to do were just insane. But the sheep live on here in the farm, and
they do play a role.
Perhaps even beyond the farm.
Yes, the sheep are a key way of getting past one particular obstacle.
Just look at those suckers run. Isn't that the cutest thing? Don't you just want to pick them up and snuggle? You can't really blame the militiamen.
No. Purry little faces.
If loving sheep is wrong,
I don't want to be right.
Come here, zombie!
Oh. And another! Zombie right there!
This is also, this level features the first and perhaps only appearance of the Impala, not to be confused with a similarly named automobile, which probably has some sort of trademark on it.
I'm sure they wouldn't mind. I think we're safe.
Yeah, this...
I know everyone is, once they drive the tractor, they think, why can't we have a tractor-on-tractor duel? And the answer is that it isn't. We tried that, and it wasn't really very fun.
It's just more fun to stick people.
Yeah. With the skewering and such.
Yes. For those of you who've been wondering why Otis Monday lives on a farm called Knob Cheese Farm, there's actually a convoluted bit of backstory I won't get into very deeply here.
You mean a rich and well-developed backstory?
Yes, a rich and well-developed backstory about Otis Monday and his prior existence and how he came into possession of the farm after his lengthy and bitter rivalry with the Knob family. A feud, one might even call it.
They had their own militia, didn't they?
It's
the Knob militia.
It's a long story. Coming soon in novel form. Yeah, not really.
So at one point in the game, you, hopefully, you enter the barn.
Yeah, if you don't enter the barn, the rest of the game's going to be really dull. It's just going to be you standing in that farm yard crying.
Originally, this was simply going to be an assault on a farmhouse. You know, basically zombies are just on the verge of the house, and it's a long, drawn-out Night of the Living Dead style assault on the house, and then fighting through the house. I gradually expanded that, or rather, I'm not sure how it eventually turned into an entire farm. There was a lot. I originally set it up where there was a farmhouse with layers of defenses around it, and I was trying to set up a pretty open-ended thing where you could assault the machine gun nests first, or you could sneak through trenches, etc. That later proved I was discouraged from actually pursuing that particular design, simply because players need some direction. They need to be told pretty clearly, you know, what they have to do next, and
you gonna take that from him, players?
Indication. They need some indication. You fools! Need some indication of what to do next, and my original implementation of the house surrounded by defenses really didn't have that. So this level gradually became more and more linear, with the defenses being presented, you know, more sequentially.
It's still a lovely pastoral romp. I mean, you get to see you get to destroy a whole farm.
Oh yeah.
Haven't you always wanted to do that in a game?
Pretty pleased with how it worked out.
Actually, it was weird. When we were originally trying to come up with the story for this, I never anticipated that we would leave Punch Bowl. I always figured we would put you in this one setting and keep you there. And I figured that Punch Bowl being what it was, there were plenty of opportunities for us to make everything interesting. And there are. One of the things that people kept saying was, oh, well, we got to do some sort of, you know, zombie versus farmhouse level. And that was just, I mean, even from the very beginning when we were coming up with concept art, one of the first things Mark Bernal, our artist, did was mock up a shot of Stubbs assaulting a farm. And it's actually, I'm really sort of happy that we have it. It worked out really well, and I kind of like the idea, the break that it gives you from, you know, you get to enter Punch Bowl and have some fun there in the first third, and then in the second third of the game you take a little walk outside, see that there's a bigger world, and then in the third of the game
you go back to finish the job.
That's right. So we make reference during a cutscene in this barn to a famous movie. If you're very young or just culturally illiterate,
like certain members of this development team,
certain members of the Wide Load staff didn't recognize the movie we were referring to. Not going to name names. Oh, Christopher. But yes, this was actually, I think Doug's original idea was to have a sort of a Braveheart speech.
Yes, the classic rallying the troops before the big assault.
And I twisted that into the Patton speech for a couple reasons. One, because it's not a Scottish zombie, and I just loved the idea, the iconography of Stubbs in front of the American flag, rallying his undead minions. One thing you may not notice, one thing we've wondered whether we should explain to you, is You'll notice the flag on the door of the barn has 2 stars crossed off. And that is because Otis Monday refuses to acknowledge Hawaii and Alaska as states. Now you know. And knowing is half the battle. Boy, I hope that isn't trademarked.
And who's the voice actor on that particular speech?
No one knows.
No one knows.
No one knows.
Man
It
of
just sorta-
mystery.
Brian knows. Brian's about to mysteriously disappear.
Well, whoever he is, he did a bang-up job.
Stubbs actually, his performance here was the stuff of legend.
Whoa!
Hold still!
Somebody's in my noggin!
One of the amazing things about this farm is the incredible stability of the hay bales as compared to the doors.
Yes.
They sure knew how to pack a mean hay bale at this farm.
And you know, funny thing about those hay bales, when we first got the hay bale scenery object from the artist who did the first pass on the model, it was strapped wrong. The straps went around the middle like an equator instead of having 2 straps around the long end, as it is. And to me, this looked totally wrong. I worked in a stable for part of one summer as a kid, and I knew what a hay bale looks like, and it looked just ridiculous and wrong to me. And I had to fight to get that changed. Alex didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He was like, no, we're not spending the time to change the straps on the hay bale, but I'm glad we did.
Do you see the sacrifices that Doug makes for you, the player?
Fought for, look at that. Well, I can't say.
You would have had a subpar hay bale experience were it not
The realism of this world would have been completely blown.
That's true.
This is no farm.
That's why we licensed the hay bale engine.
Yes.
Oh!
I'm dead. That don't make no sense.
Well, actually, one thing I want to say is that this is probably the one level where you get to hear Otis the most, which is a good thing, I suppose. Otis does get to deliver a little more of his worldview, which is unique.
I guess it is a worldview, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's a what do the Germans call it? A Weltanschauung, or yes. And Otis would probably shoot you for even saying that. But yeah, so
yeah, he covers all the bases.
Yeah. Well, not quite all of them. I think the rest will be covered in his forthcoming
novel.
Yeah.
Or
his
manifesto, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be on the same shelf as Ann Coulter and Al Franken.
Yeah.
But will be less lucid than either.
How you like this?
One of the best parts of developing a game is when the game starts surprising you. When things that you've done combine in some weird way that you didn't expect, and it's sort of shocking and delightful at the same time. And definitely, I think combat dialogue for me is one of the things that tends to combine itself in weird and unusual ways that sometimes work far better than I could have ever expected. One of my favorite moments during development was when there was a test level we made, and there were 2 police officers chasing Stubbs, and the cops were rather trigger happy at that point. They'd fire at anything, through anything, including each other, just to get to you. And so 2 cops were chasing me, and one of them fired point blank range into the back of his friend, and his friend turned around and stared at the gunman, who said, "It wasn't me." And I've told that story a billion times, and I've told it better every other time.
What I guess the one I love the most is the brilliant understatement of the medium militia when you shoot or rip off one or both of his arms, and he says, "That ain't good."
Ah. Do you think existence precedes essence? That's crazy talk.
I'm Alex Ropian, project director, Stubbs.
I'm Christopher MacArthur, a programmer.
Yeah, Christopher and I basically did this damn level together. I kind of did a first pass, and then Christopher picked up all my mess and made it good.
Originally, in the beginning here, there was that tour bot kind of gives you a tour of this area of the dam, and the robots hit on her and stuff. we took out some of her dialogue because it was just, you know, get in the way
can
of,
be kind of chatty.
Yeah, a little too chatty.
Yeah.
Got in the way of some of the fighting sounds.
There's how many lines of dialogue would you estimate there is in the combat dialogue? There's a lot of combat dialogue.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know.
I remember we had to take some lines out of the robots because there's like 8 robots, and they each have a full set of triggers. There were 75 megs worth of combat dialogue for the robots alone.
And that's not even their special case dialogue for certain areas.
Mother! Hello, citizen. Let me know if you see something that needs fixing.
So I kind of designed these areas also with, there's a lot of robots in the beginning, and they kind of ignore you and just go about their business and work on things, but I try to make them patrol right through the firefights so that a scientist will accidentally hit a robot with a shot or two, and then he'll freak out and go lost in space on you. They won't get into the mix with you unless they actually take the damage, so.
Time for some brush knuckles! Take
Witness
that!
the wrath of science. I'll
Don't eat
you.
me! No! Humans don't normally do that. Stop it!
So I think this is the first time you ever encounter these shotgun scientists.
The boomstick guys.
Boomsticks. And originally I wanted to do something cool with them in here where you would burn their faces off with like hot steam, but we got concerned with the amount of particles in this room, and so we kind of just made it a cool fight. And kind of moved that into the next water rooms, which are less particle intensive. So it's the first time you fight both kinds of scientists, actually. Yeah, so instead of doing the burning off their faces with steam, we did sort of a little optional choke them with gas in this room, which is you have all these vents on the ceiling and blowing the fresh air into this room, but once you turn them all off, the room fills with the poisonous gas. They choke to death. This is kind of a cool area now because it's one of the ones in the game where you get to choose how you want to beat it. You could come here from the very beginning and watch that guy go in there and just possess someone and just, you know, they won't even know you're a bad guy and just walk right in there and open it. You can be stealthy with the hand and walk through the vent, or you can fight. You can do Rambo on it and just fight your way through it. So it's kind of cool that you kind of get to choose how you want to play the game right there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like air ducts and vents in the game that you don't have to use, but they're there. Good reason to go back and visit some areas.
I also liked in this area where you get to see the zombies behind the glass, banging on the glass. It kind of reminded me of the new Dawn of the Dead, where the zombies are banging on the mall glass and you just see them through there, or Alien Resurrection, where they have them trapped behind the glass and
right.
They kind of just beat their way out. Stubbs lets them loose and havoc ensues.
And this is the first level where you use your whiz as a real mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So originally the dam is the combination of two levels that we designed early on. One was Taint the Reservoir, where the whole idea of it was to fight your way to the reservoir and then to just take a big old pee in it. And then the other level was breaking this huge dam. That's another. We've had these ideas where we want the zombies to break stuff in the environment. So we had this crazy idea that you would, you know, bust a whole dam. So we kind of combined those two into this one level. And the P battle is really, the idea behind that is basically it's just a solo game of King of the Hill, where you have to be in the hill and everybody's coming at you. And the P was just kind of a cool mechanic to force you to stay on the hill to actually solve it. And it's just funny. I mean, a zombie taking a whiz.
I liked peeing on the cops. That's my highlight, is peeing on the cops and make them fall into the water.
Yeah, actually, I remember actually this was in here for a while. In order to make the P work, it had to come out of a model, I guess. And so I remember Seeger stuck the gut grenade model.
I think that's still on there.
So, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it probably won't be by the time you play this. But if you spin the camera around, you know, the gut grenade was hanging out of Stubbs' pants.
It looks pretty gross.
It's a horrific picture of Zombie Wang.
No! You're all gonna eat some lead, Curtis! Get hip to this! Give that back!
I don't want to fight. I want to go home and read the paper.
I'm Alex Soropian, project director, Stubbs.
And I'm Patrick Curry, the lead designer on Stubbs. And we're here to talk about the level that we internally call Offender. And I forget what it's actually called in the game, but it's the fourth to last level in the game. It's the level where Stubbs comes back to Punch Bowl after destroying the dam, and he finds that it's populated with the army.
So this is the first level with you fight the army guys.
Yeah, it's the first level with the army guys, and the army guys are cool because they have all these awesome weapons, and like their combat rifle, and then a sniper rifle and a bazooka. So the army is a whole lot of fun to possess and use their weapons. So we specifically designed this level to be pretty rough and to require you to possess lots of guys to actually get through it.
We like to think we're doing unique stuff here at the Load, and people ask us like where we get ideas from, and we're always talking about how we'd like to do stuff that's different. We'll probably never make a World War II shooter. But this is our World War II shooter right here.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a Castle Wolfenstein in here.
Yeah, the army guys, they're like the first serious enemy you fight. I mean, they're all the enemies are, they're enemies, and they have, I think, a nice sort of curve to the way they ramp in difficulty. But like the cops are really like, they're sort of like, they're all the cops that like left their tough beats and came to Punch Bowl because they thought it was going to be a cakewalk and they were just going to like sit around eating donuts, and then once the zombies show up, they're like, oh crap! And then the militia are just like, they're just nuts and out of control.
They're old geezers, and the scientists are just kooky brainiacs. And so the Army guys are the first guys that are trained killers, and I think it shows in the difficulty of this level and the later level with the Army guys.
What the? They can come right in. Oh God! Not like this! That's mighty unusual. I think we may have a zombie. Let this be a dream! There's one of those undead beasts! Who is that?
What was that? Laying down cover fire! I'm heading over there. Moving on over.
Offender's got some stuff that's only on Offender too. Well, I guess landmines show up a little later too, but you experience landmines for the first time here, which is kind of funny because you can totally use your zombies to run through a field of landmines, and you get this kind of crazy chain reaction where guys blow up into the air and they fall back down on landmines and blow up again, and that's pretty funny.
Yeah, the landmines was actually one of the very first things I ever thought of that would be fun to do with the zombies, because you have your zombies and you want to be able to use them for things like the meat shield is real obvious. You use that in a lot of the levels.
And just to be clear, there's nothing funny about a landmine.
There's not, really, except to see guys bounce between three of them.
That's right.
And so the landmines are one of the things I really wanted you to be able to use your zombies for, is to clear out the minefields. You can shove a zombie in there. But then also another thing that is in Offender is you can use your zombies here. Actually, you have to use your zombies to knock down some of the big walls. The Army's shown up and they've set up these barricades protecting kind of key choke points in the city. And so you have to get enough zombies over there to knock down the walls, and wanted to kind of give you a feeling of being Stubbs the Uber zombie,
right,
and making your minions do stuff.
Yeah, that was like one of the initial core ideas was this notion that zombies have above average, like super strength, and especially Stubbs, who's King Zombie. But we didn't have we weren't going to make the whole environment destructible, because that poses a whole bunch of just crazy design problems. But we have a few ways in which Stubbs and his zombies really affect the environment, and we built some gameplay around them. One of them is breaking through and killing through doors and windows. If you've gotten this far, you've probably eaten dudes through windows on the farm. That's where we first implemented that. And then there's a couple of big encounters in Offender where you have to knock down these big walls, and that's the whole idea, that you would send your zombies off to destroy some part of the environment. Almost like a boss battle against the environment.
Yeah, there's no uber characters in the Army. There's the sniper rifle guy and the bazooka guy. They're kind of like mini bosses, but there's no super leader. And so the environment in this level in City Hall are really the boss. It's this totally trashed out punch bowl that has all kinds of obstacles, whether it's crashed cars or giant barricades of collapsed buildings. So it was a lot of fun to think about what the city would be like after the zombie invasion.
Hi, I'm Alan Turner again, and we're here to, I'm a designer here at White Load, and we're here to talk about the lab level.
This is Matt Sell, sitting here with Alan, talking about the lab. Those of you who aren't scientists might not recognize the giant statue that we have in our lobby here.
Yep, methane. Symbolizing the power of Stubbs duodenum.
That's right. It's all full of hidden meanings, kids. You'll never find them all, but you can try.
So actually, since we're talking about the lab, maybe we can get Matt here to tell us a little more about Dr. Y, since this whole level is built around just leading you up to an encounter with Dr. Y.
Right. So Dr. Y was actually sort of a latecomer to the whole story. Not really late, but in all the iterations of the story, we didn't always have him. And he was actually sort of hard to pin down as a character. But he ended up being this cross sort of between the absent-minded professor and Dr. Mengele. He's this sort of guy who he's not really evil. He's not a bad guy. I call him ethically challenged. You know, he just doesn't feel that there's anything he can't or should not do in the pursuit of advancing science.
Right. He's the traditional crazy scientist you see in a lot of the old pulp fiction where they bring havoc onto the world not because they mean to do it, just because they're too damn curious for their own good. Right, yeah, so one of the challenges with the scientists in general was we didn't want them to do the same thing that everybody else had. Not more guns and pistols and batons and all that craziness. But we wanted you to get two things across. One was that they are the source of most of the weapons and scientific oddities that you see in the course of the game, and that they've still got things hidden away that you haven't seen yet. We wound up actually introducing them earlier than we had anticipated. They're supposed to be only in the lab, and they wound up being pushed back to was it the dam where they're first seen?
I think maybe even the greenhouse.
Yes, that's right.
In the greenhouse, which is second level.
But the deal was we wanted to give them weapons that kind of represented the time period, right? So they've got these crazy ray guns. They shoot this crazy fat ray, and the beams and the ray guns are kind of inspired by the beams in the Forbidden Planet. There's a point where they're shooting at the id monster, and there's just like these kind of stupid, obviously drawn in laser beams that in their own way look kind of cool. So we figured that would be the basis for the stuff that we have. At the same time, there's a certain liquid nature to the beams that gives them this kind of etheric science thing going on. So they're not lasers in the traditional sense of what we would think of nowadays. They're like this fat, fantastic laser blast that splatters and sprays and whatnot. There's also the boom gun, and the boom gun is that weapon that shoots the string of rings. And what's neat about that was it was the first weapon that actually was actually the only weapon where you could actually manipulate someone. With that, you could push things back and push them up against the wall and then move them to places you wanted them to go. And so when you're fighting with them on the dam, you can pick a guy up, throw him over the edge of the dam. And I think it was ultimately that weapon that got them spread out to a couple other levels in the game. But what makes this a little more deadly than it is in other places is that the spaces that you have to fight people in are much tighter than they are in the dam. So you're forced into these really close quarters fights where what seemed like a small irritation before of a guy who's shooting you here and there becomes this extreme irritation, because if you leave them long enough, some of them will go berserk and just hold down the trigger, and the guys with the blue lasers would just rail you.
Oh, no!
What the?
Another thing, there's actually two classes of scientists. You can hear the difference in the audio, actually. The head scientists, so to speak, are the ones with the British accent, and the assistant scientists are the ones who have that sort of lab monkey, weirdo, Peter Lorre quality to their voice.
And the other ones also shoot the pink ray.
That's true.
And the blue rays are the lead scientists.
For all you train spotters out.
This was also one of the levels that inspired the idea that the robots were an environmental enemy. That they initially don't attack you directly. They're just kind of there to help you out, but as soon as they take damage, they flip out and start to attack anything and everything in sight, which makes them kind of cool in these close quarters fights, because you get if you know there's a robot in the area, you can hurt a robot and run and know that he'll tear up the scientist, and the scientist will have to shoot him, and he explodes, and you take out robot scientists, everything else in sight.
I'm not a fighter by trade, just something of a prodigy. It's taking control!
Time for some preventative
The battle with Dr. Y, however, the idea was to take all the weapons that you've met with the scientists and take them up a notch. So the main crazy blaster that he shoots, that red ray, is just an extension of the red ray that the assistant scientists use, and the big knockback ray that he fires to push you away from the central obelisk thing is just an extension of the boom gun. But what makes them cool and different is the fact that they're continuous. So they're much more like the inspiration for both those beams is sort of like the death ray from the old George Powell War of the Worlds, where the beam is just like this continuous blast of pain and devastation and destruction. And I think that worked out pretty well.
Everything's broken!
One of the things you may have noticed as you're playing through the game is that there's not a whole lot of diversity in Punch Bowl, and when you get to that boss battle with Dr. Y, that's actually sort of explained. The only thing that's missing in a perfect city is a perfect citizenry, and so Dr. Y creates it for his boss. And that's why you don't really have to feel terribly bad about eating all these brains. So if that's been gnawing at any of you, you can just put that fear aside.
Yeah, I kind of like to think of the lab as the thing that emphasizes the nature of this zombie versus the rest of the city. That in the Stubbs is in some essence a creature of the wild, brought out to get rid of this death-like stasis that's holding on to the city. I mean, everything is, they're making a perfect citizen. It's a perfect world. Everything is clean. Everything is precise. Everything is exactly as someone wants it to be, and would stay that way unless Stubbs came in and juiced it up a little bit for us.
That's true. I've spoken about this elsewhere, but one of the big inspirations story-wise for Stubbs was Poe's The Mask of the Red Death. And one of the things that I think Stubbs the Zombie owes to that is just the idea of a person who tries to build a wall big enough to keep all the chaos out. And he can't. There's just no way of doing it. But unlike unlike Mask of the Red Death, which is just straightforward tragedy, we try to look at it sort of from the Red Death's point of view and see what a party it would be. There's something to be said here. I don't know that I really want to go into a lot of detail about my deepest satirical thoughts, but there is a point to all of this, and it's a subtle point, and you don't even have to see that it's there to enjoy the game, but there it is if you want it.
Get away from that machine! I promise not to hurt you much. Against my staggering intellect, you are nothing!
Now, I also have to comment that one of the greatest satisfactions in this game, for me, is walking through the sterile areas of this laboratory and just having these terrible bloody fights that leave it just covered in gore and chaos, and in a weird way it becomes more alive once everything is dead than it did when everything was alive. And again, that's another comment on just the nature of the themes that this game is trying to explore.
Stubbs is the only real person in this city, and he decorates oddly, but with a certain, with a certain style and panache, all his own.
You're beating. Zombie, over there! Let this be a dream! How sad! Oh God! Not like this! There's another one! Ow!
Alright, I'm Doug Zartman. I'm the level designer for the level known to us as C40 City Hall.
Alright, I am Chris Cobb. I'm one of the level artists that worked on this level as well as a few others throughout the game.
This is a level that went through many iterations. When I began this, I was looking forward to creating this entire city overrun by zombies, full of tanks, full of the army, having these giant battles. And so I actually designed it that way. This was originally about 10 times larger than it is now.
Which is pretty amazing because it's still very, very large.
Yeah, the sight lines are just ridiculous. So there was this continual process of chopping it down and then blocking off streets and making it much more manageable.
Yes, it's quite an effort keeping designers in check.
That's right.
This kind of thing.
Neat thing about this level is that this is the first one where you're spending a lot of time in vehicles, not just vehicles, but tanks that can actually do a lot of damage. So the long straight streets certainly are conducive to that. It was sort of tricky because a lot of this was a lot of the vehicle action and encounters were designed before Chris came in and actually messed up the streets, which made the vehicles stop
working half the time.
Right. Well, yeah, that was my job to come in and put some huge craters in the ground, but I think they actually, we got some happy accidents out of them with things like jumping the Jeep off of the big craters.
Yeah, exactly. And taking shelter in the craters against fire. I didn't really design a whole lot of places where you could hide in these streets, and so the craters were a great addition for that.
Oh! Whoa!
So yeah, as Doug was saying, I think this is the first level where you actually get to see the tank. Is that true?
You see it right at the end of Offender.
Okay, well definitely the first level you get to drive the tank.
Drive it, that's right.
Yeah, the tank was quite an undertaking. I'm pretty proud of it. Yeah, getting all the treads to work accurately and all that was a pretty big deal. Hopefully you can actually see it. You can't see a lot of the underworkings of it a whole lot when you're actually driving it, but when the AIs are driving it around, hopefully you'll get to see some of that. So that turned out pretty cool, I think. Hopefully it'll be fun to drive around and do some damage.
Shit, sir!
All right, so this is the approach to the interior of the City Hall level. Yeah, when I first got my hands on this, it was enormous. It's still pretty big, but it was a good 3 times larger than it is now. And if what I've heard is true, it used to be even bigger than that.
Yeah.
So that's quite amazing. But I think we still maintained a pretty good size here. So it's a good little backdrop for the tank battle here.
The early stages of placing AIs on this level and setting up fights, I was constantly like changing the fog, bringing in the fog closer and closer and closer to try to keep the frame rate decent. But Portals took care of that.
All right. So yeah, a lot of landscaping went on here. We got rid of some. We used to have 2 statues in here. One of them was a bit phallic, so we got rid of that one. Put in nice big Monday statue to properly enhance his ego, right in the middle.
Yeah, we couldn't have anything obscene in this game.
No
innuendo.
No, we were this classy game here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I rode all the way.
Hostile sighted! Why don't you pick on someone your own size?
So the good thing about it being big is that even when it is full of scenery, and things that can block your vehicle, it's still big enough you can get around and find some paths.
Right. I was worried when I put in some of the slight elevation changes here. I was a bit concerned that the tank wouldn't be able to navigate in there very well, but it seems to Seems to do okay, getting up
Even
and
the
down.
AIs are usually pretty good.
All right.
Following their move points.
Yeah, I think if anything, it makes it a lot more interesting terrain to navigate.
We went back and forth on just how well armored the tanks are, because of course when you're fighting it on foot, you know, you're fighting it with grenades and the flatulence and, you know, not much else. And so we had to make it possible to kill the tank in a reasonable amount of time when you're on foot. But then when you're in a tank yourself, you know, that level of armor meant that, you know, you could kill the thing with 2 shots, sometimes 1 shot. So there's a lot of trickery going on behind the scenes to make the tanks stronger when you're fighting them with a tank than on foot.
Right, which is I'm sure difficult because you want the tanks to feel very powerful. Yeah. But so that's a tough balance there.
The pain! Whoa!
I'll have a better view over there. Let this be a dream!
That is... Oh, God!
I'll show you how we do it at the office.
I don't care anymore!
Oh!
Who needs a gun when I can do this? It's eating my brain! There's another zombie!
Zombie!
I don't care anymore! Oh! Oh, the pain! The pain! Oh, someone kill it, please!
We're gonna keep...
I'm Doug Zartman. I'm the level designer for C50 End, the interior of the City Hall.
And I'm Matt Sell, still the writer.
The City Hall is the last holdout for Monday and his cronies.
This is also the level where the various secrets are revealed. Dark Monday family secrets. Things only a Monday would know. And not even Andrew Monday knows some of that. As much of a surprise to him as it is to you.
Yes. This is the level where our promise that this is a love story is actually fulfilled.
I mean, you do
or at least
see,
our claim
yeah.
the love story is.
Well, no, I mean, you see Stubbs earlier sort of swooning, and this is the level where he makes good on that swoon. Everything between the greenhouse and now has just been an attempt really to get closer to Maggie.